My ex-boyfriend showed up at my office with a huge bouquet of roses and a string quartet playing our special song, creating a romantic moment in front of all my coworkers. I froze in place as my colleagues started cooing over this sweet gesture, not knowing we'd broken up 3 months ago after I discovered his conversations with 5 different women. Baby, I know we've had our difficulties, Jason said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But you can't just throw away 3 years of a relationship over one little mistake. Don't be so dramatic. When I politely asked him to leave the office, his charming smile changed to something cold, familiar, and dangerous. I'm not going anywhere until you hear me out, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. In that moment, I realized the only way to resolve the situation was to let him think he'd won, at least for a moment. I could feel my cheeks burning with embarrassment as my coworkers watched the scene unfold. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed to think this was the most romantic thing they'd ever seen. Little did they know that this grand gesture was just another manipulation tactic from a man who had spent years gaslighting me. The string quartet continued playing that stupid Ed Sheeran song he claimed was our song, even though I'd told him multiple times I wasn't a fan. Jason stood there, tall and confident in his expensive suit, holding those roses like they were some kind of peace offering instead of what they really were, a public spectacle designed to corner me. Cassie, he said, lowering his voice to that soft, intimate tone he always used when he wanted something. I've been miserable without you. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I made one mistake. Everyone deserves a second chance, right? One mistake. That's what he called the systematic cheating I'd discovered. That's what he called the months of lying to my face. That's what he called the gaslighting that made me doubt my own sanity. My boss, Karen, approached with a concerned look. Is everything okay here? She asked, glancing between me and Jason. Before I could answer, Jason smoothly extended his hand. Jason Mitchell, Cassie's boyfriend. Sorry for the disruption, but when you're trying to win back the love of your life, sometimes you have to make a statement. Karen smiled, clearly charmed. That was Jason's superpower, making everyone believe he was Prince Charming while I was just being difficult. Maybe you two should talk privately? Karen suggested, giving me a look that said she thought I should hear him out. And that's when I knew I couldn't just kick him out, not without looking like the unreasonable one in this narrative he was crafting. I needed a different approach. I needed to be smarter than that. 5 minutes, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We can talk for 5 minutes. Jason's smile widened. He thought he was winning. He always thought he was winning. Updated. Hey Reddit, sorry for the delay in posting this update. The past few days have been absolutely insane, and I've been dealing with the fallout from everything that happened at my office. First, thank you all so much for your supportive comments on my original post. I was honestly shocked by how many of you have been through similar situations with manipulative exes. Reading your stories made me feel less alone and validated that I wasn't overreacting. A lot of you asked for more details about how Jason and I got together and what led to our breakup, so I'll try to fill in those gaps. And to those who asked, yes, the string quartet was real, and yes, it was as mortifying as it sounds. I'm still getting teasing comments from coworkers who think the whole thing was just so romantic. Have you ever had someone publicly embarrass you and try to pass it off as romance? It's the worst, right? 3 years with Jason were like riding a roller coaster. Thrilling moments alternated with periods when I felt like I was suffocating. He was charismatic, an ambitious sales manager who literally charmed me at our first meeting at Starbucks when I accidentally spilled my latte on his expensive Brooks Brothers shirt. The first serious red flag appeared 6 months in when I discovered strange messages on his phone. He convinced me it was just an old colleague and then accused me of being paranoid and lacking trust. I believed him then. By the end of the first year, his phone was always face down, and he would leave the room to answer calls. Our perfect story that Jason bragged about on social media had a dark side nobody knew about. He could ignore me for days over the slightest mistake, then return with lavish gifts, pretending nothing had happened. You're too sensitive, he would say when I tried to discuss his disappearances or his flirting with waitresses right in front of me. You just need to relax. The final straw was when I accidentally discovered conversations on his laptop that he'd left open when he urgently stepped out to answer a call. I wasn't planning to snoop, but a notification popped up right on the screen. A message from a woman named Amber with explicit content and attached photos. When I opened the chat, I discovered not 1 but 5 active conversations with different women, to whom he was saying almost the same things. At first, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There were date plans, intimate photos, and conversations spanning months. All while we were still very much together. All while he was telling me he loved me and wanted to build a future together. It was like discovering the person I thought I knew was actually a stranger wearing a familiar face. I confronted him that night when he came home. He denied everything at first, claiming I was misinterpreting the conversations. When I showed him screenshots I'd taken as proof, he switched tactics, minimizing what he'd done. "It's just flirting," he said, shrugging like I was overreacting. "It doesn't mean anything. It's not like I actually slept with any of them." But the timestamps and contents of some messages proved that was a lie too. When I pointed this out, his demeanor changed completely. Suddenly, it was my fault for invading his privacy. How dare I look at his private conversations? Didn't I trust him? Maybe if I wasn't so cold and distant lately, he wouldn't have needed to seek attention elsewhere. Classic Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. I recognized the tactic because I'd been reading about emotional manipulation, trying to understand why I always felt confused and guilty after our arguments, even when I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I packed a bag that night and stayed with my friend Melissa. I blocked him everywhere: phone, email, social media. I deleted our photos together, trying to excise him from my digital life as I was doing with my real one. When I returned to our apartment a week later to get more of my things, I made sure he wouldn't be there. I left my key and a note saying we were done. I thought that was the end. I really did. 3 months of peace made me believe he'd moved on. But I should have known better. Jason never lost gracefully. In the office, the situation was escalating. The musicians kept playing, Jason held the bouquet, and my colleagues began nervously glancing at each other, realizing something was wrong. I could feel my cheeks burning with humiliation, but I maintained outward calm despite my trembling hands. Looking at the string quartet members and my awkwardly shifting colleagues, Jason decided to raise the stakes. "I'm not moving until I get an answer," he announced, dropping to one knee. "I even prepared a ring." He pulled out a small velvet box, and the women in the office gasped. My boss, Karen, approached and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "Maybe just talk to him? He's really trying." I looked at Jason, at that familiar smile hiding something calculating and cold. The public proposal was his perfect move. He knew social pressure would make rejection almost impossible. I noticed his fingers slightly trembling, a sign I'd learned to recognize over 3 years. He wasn't just nervous. He was furious that his plan wasn't working instantly. "Please call security," I quietly told Karen. "He's not who he pretends to be." Jason heard me and his mask slipped. "You really want to do this to me? After everything I've done for you?" His voice rose, grew louder. "You can't even imagine what I can do if I want to." In that moment, something clicked inside me. I was looking at a person I once loved, now transformed into a stranger ready to destroy my career and reputation. My heart was no longer racing with fear. It beat evenly, calmly. For the first time in a long time, I saw the situation with crystal clarity. I took a deep breath and forced my face to soften, allowing my eyes to fill with tears. Not real ones, but convincing enough. "Jason, let's just talk privately," I said quietly. "Not here, not like this." The relief on his face was so obvious. He thought he'd won again, that his manipulation had worked. From the corner of my eye, I noticed security already appearing at the office entrance, but I slightly shook my head in their direction. I needed more than just ejecting Jason through the door. I needed evidence, needed truth, and I knew exactly how to get them. I wiped away a fake tear and pointed to the conference room at the end of the corridor. "Let's talk there," I said, trying to make my voice sound uncertain. "We'll have privacy." Jason smiled, that self-satisfied smile I used to find charming, but now saw right through. He didn't know the room I'd chosen was the only one in the office with automatic audio and video recording for important client meetings. Updated. Thanks for all the comments on my previous update. I didn't expect this post to blow up the way it did. Several people asked if I was afraid being alone with Jason in the conference room, and honestly, yes, I was terrified. But sometimes you have to face your fears to finally break free from them. To those asking if what I did with the recording was legal, yes, our office has notices about recording posted at all entrances, and Jason walked right past them. Plus, he came to my workplace making a scene, so he didn't exactly have an expectation of privacy. The worst part about manipulation is how it makes you doubt yourself. For 3 years, I thought I was the problem. Now I know better. I'll continue the story of what happened in that conference room. When the conference room door closed behind us, Jason instantly changed. The smile vanished. He carelessly tossed the bouquet on the table and turned to me. "You really made me sweat out there," he said, loosening his tie. "What's with the security show? Decided to play hard to get?" I silently approached the wall and, pretending to be nervous, began fidgeting with the control panel buttons, actually making sure the recording system was activated and the lobby screen connected. "Jason, why did you really come here?" I asked, turning to face him. His features sharpened. Are you serious? After you blocked me everywhere? Deleted all our photos? Told your friends I'm some kind of cheater? You think I'll let you just walk away and tarnish my name? I noticed his fists involuntarily clenching. Do you regret losing me or losing control over me? I asked calmly. Here's what's going to happen, said Jason, stepping toward me. You'll walk out of here smiling. Tell everyone we're back together. And stop spreading lies about my so-called infidelity. When I didn't respond, he moved even closer. And if you don't, I'll make sure your reputation is destroyed. I have photos you wouldn't want to show your colleagues. And you know what funny rumor goes around about girls who get promotions? His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but full of venom. I felt a strange calmness. You know what's interesting about this conference room, Jason? I asked, watching his expression. Absolutely everything that happens here is recorded, for security and broadcast. I pointed to the small screen on the wall showing the office hallway, where my clustered colleagues, security, and even the musicians stood, all with shocked expressions. They had heard every word. The color instantly drained from Jason's face. You couldn't have, he began, but security guards were already opening the door. Miss, do you need help? One asked, looking at Jason with undisguised contempt. What the hell are you doing? Jason hissed, his voice low as the security guards approached. His eyes darted from me to the screen, to the small camera in the corner of the room he hadn't noticed before. This is private. You can't record me without permission. Actually, we can, I replied, my voice steadier than I'd thought possible. There are notices about recording throughout the building, but you were too busy with your grand entrance to notice, weren't you? The security guard, a tall man named Marcus who had always been friendly during my late nights at the office, placed himself between Jason and me. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. Jason's face contorted with rage. This is a misunderstanding, he said, trying to regain his composure, that charming mask slipping back into place as he addressed the guards rather than me. We're having a private conversation. My girlfriend is just upset. Ex-girlfriend, I corrected, and I think everyone heard exactly what kind of private conversation we were having. You're making a scene over nothing, Jason said, looking past the guards to where some of my colleagues were still visible through the glass walls. Baby, don't do this. Don't embarrass yourself. I almost laughed at the irony. I'm not the one embarrassing myself right now. Sir, Marcus said more firmly, you need to leave now, or we'll have to escort you out. Jason's eyes locked with mine, and for a second I saw something that sent a chill down my spine. Pure, unfiltered hatred. This isn't over, he said quietly. Actually, it is, came a voice from the doorway. Karen stood there, arms crossed, expression stern. And just so we're clear, I'm calling the police. Threats against my employees aren't something I take lightly. Jason's face paled. Threats? I didn't threaten anyone. This is ridiculous. Karen raised an eyebrow and gestured to the ceiling. Should we replay the recording? I particularly liked the part about ruining her reputation and the inappropriate photos. Very classy. As the security guards moved to escort him out, Jason made one last desperate attempt. Cassie, don't do this. You know I love you. You know everything we've been through together. 3 years? Are you really going to throw that away? I looked at him, this man who had made me doubt my own perceptions, who had lied to my face for months, who had just threatened to destroy my career because his ego couldn't handle rejection. Goodbye, Jason, I said simply. As he was led away, still protesting his innocence, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Relief, sadness, and something unexpected. Pride. I had stood my ground. I had protected myself. And most importantly, I had exposed the truth. Karen approached me once Jason was out of sight. Are you okay? She asked, concern evident in her voice. I took a deep breath. I will be. The office was buzzing with whispers as I emerged from the conference room. The string quartet had packed up their instruments and were looking thoroughly uncomfortable. My colleagues were a mix of shocked, sympathetic, and embarrassed. Show's over, everyone, Karen announced. Let's get back to work. She turned to me. Take the rest of the day off. That's not a suggestion. I nodded gratefully and went to gather my things. As I was collecting my purse from my desk, Rita from accounting approached. I called the police, she said quietly. My sister went through something similar last year. They should be here soon. Thank you, I whispered, suddenly feeling the adrenaline begin to fade, leaving me shaky and drained. And Cassie? Rita added. What you did in there was brave, really brave. I managed a small smile, though tears were threatening. It didn't feel brave. It felt necessary. By the time I reached the elevator, 2 police officers were already stepping out. Karen intercepted them, gesturing toward the conference room where, presumably, they would view the recording. As the elevator doors closed, I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. It was over. Finally. Truly over. Or so I thought. The next few days were a blur. The police took my statement and collected the video evidence. They explained my options for filing for a restraining order, which I immediately pursued. Jason was charged with making criminal threats, though his lawyer managed to get him released on bail almost immediately. I took 2 days off work, spending them alternating between anxiety and relief. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from concerned colleagues, friends who had heard about the incident, and even a few tentative texts from Jason's friends, checking if I was actually okay. As if they hadn't enabled his behavior for years. When I returned to the office on Thursday, I was met with an outpouring of support that caught me completely off guard. Coffee appeared on my desk throughout the day, delivered by colleagues who had never spoken more than a few words to me before. Lunch was ordered for me by the marketing team. Even the normally standoffish VP of operations stopped by to awkwardly pat my shoulder and mumble something about workplace safety being paramount. Karen called me into her office that afternoon, and I braced myself for a conversation about personal issues affecting workplace productivity, or some other corporate speak for "your drama is disruptive." Instead, she closed the door and said, "I owe you an apology." I blinked in surprise. For what? For not recognizing what was happening immediately? For suggesting you talk to him? She sighed. I should have trusted your instincts from the start. You couldn't have known, I said. Maybe not everything, but I should have recognized someone trying to manipulate a situation. She leaned forward. I've been there myself, you know. Different circumstances, but the same tactics. We talked for nearly an hour, not as boss and employee, but as 2 women who had experienced similar patterns of behavior from men who claimed to love them. It was the most personal conversation I'd ever had with Karen, and it shifted something in our professional relationship too. Before I left her office, she mentioned casually, "By the way, that promotion we've been discussing? It's yours. The paperwork will be finalized next week." Is this because of what happened? I asked, suddenly uncomfortable. Because I don't want... It's because you've earned it, Karen interrupted firmly. Your handling of the Westridge account alone justified it. But I won't lie. Watching how you remained strategic and level-headed under extreme pressure only confirmed what I already knew. You're exactly the kind of person we need in senior management. News travels fast in the corporate world. Within days, Jason had been placed on administrative leave at his own company pending an internal investigation. Apparently, I wasn't the only woman he'd made uncomfortable, just the only one who had concrete evidence. The restraining order was granted a week later. Jason was ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my home, and my workplace. He was also prohibited from contacting me through any means, directly or through third parties. Of course, that didn't stop him from creating fake social media accounts to send me messages alternating between apologies, self-pity, and thinly veiled accusations that I had overreacted and ruined his life. I documented everything and forwarded it to my lawyer and the police. Each violation extended the restraining order and added to his growing legal troubles. The video from the conference room somehow leaked online. I suspect it was David from IT, who had always been particularly protective of the women in the office after his own sister experienced workplace harassment. The video went viral, sparking conversations about gaslighting, manipulative behavior, and the way abuse often escalates when a relationship ends. Women began coming forward with their own stories about Jason. Former colleagues, old classmates, even a waitress from his favorite restaurant. The pattern was always the same: charm, control, betrayal, and finally, intimidation when they tried to leave. Jason's carefully constructed image crumbled rapidly. His company, facing public pressure, officially terminated him. His social media accounts disappeared. According to mutual friends, who were rapidly becoming just my friends, he moved back to his hometown in another state after his apartment lease wasn't renewed. He attempted one last grand gesture: a public apology video that was so clearly crafted by a crisis PR consultant that it only made things worse. In it, he referred to his behavior as misunderstandings and communication issues, never once actually acknowledging what he had done wrong. The comment section was brutal. Updated. It's been 6 months since the string quartet incident, as my coworkers now jokingly call it. First, thank you all for the overwhelming support on my previous posts. Your comments and messages helped me through some really dark days when I was second-guessing myself or feeling guilty. Old habits die hard. To answer the most common questions, yes, I kept the promotion, and I'm actually thriving in my new role. No, Jason hasn't tried to contact me again after his disastrous apology video got ratioed into oblivion. And yes, I am dating again, though very cautiously and with a much better understanding of what healthy communication actually looks like. The most unexpected outcome of all this? I've become something of an unofficial resource at work for others dealing with toxic relationships. Turns out, once you share your story, so many others feel safe enough to share theirs too. Have you ever noticed how the things we're most afraid of losing often turn out to be the things weighing us down? 6 months later, I sit in my new office with a view of the city. The restraining order keeping Jason away from me remains in effect, and the video of his threats, which somehow leaked online, I suspect David from IT, has garnered millions of views and sparked a wave of stories from other women about toxic relationships and gaslighting. Jason lost his job and, according to rumors, moved to another state after his public apologies only made the situation worse. Sometimes I think about the frightened woman I was, who endured manipulation and gaslighting out of fear of being alone or not finding anyone better. If I could tell her something, I'd remind her that some people enter our lives not as blessings, but as lessons. And contrary to popular belief, love should never hurt. If you're in a relationship where you're made to doubt your reality, where you have to make yourself smaller so another person can feel bigger, that's not love. It's a cage, and you deserve freedom. My team surprised me last week with a cake to celebrate my 6-month anniversary in the senior management position. As we gathered in the break room, Karen pulled me aside. "I never told you this," she said quietly. "But after what happened with Jason, I had HR review our security protocols. We found 3 other instances in the past 2 years where employees' exes showed up unannounced. None as dramatic as yours, but still concerning." "What did you do?" I asked. She smiled. "We implemented a new visitor policy and security training for all staff. We're calling it the Cassie Protocol." I laughed, embarrassed but touched. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just keep being the badass you are." My phone buzzed with the notification. It was from the survivors support group I'd joined after everything with Jason. I'd been hesitant at first, not sure if I qualified as a survivor when others in the group had experienced physical abuse. But they welcomed me, validated my experience, and helped me understand that emotional abuse leaves scars too. They're just harder to see. The message was a reminder about tomorrow's meeting. The topic? Recognizing the early warning signs. I was scheduled to speak, to share my story with others who might still be in the fog of manipulation and gaslighting. As I tucked my phone away, I felt a sense of purpose I'd never experienced before. Maybe this was why everything had happened, so I could help others recognize what took me 3 years to see. The path to healing isn't linear. Some days are harder than others. I still flinch sometimes when I hear our old, special song playing in stores. I still occasionally catch myself wondering if I'm too sensitive or overreacting. Old thought patterns that are hard to break. But those moments are becoming rarer. The voice in my head that sounds like Jason is getting quieter, replaced by my own voice. Stronger, clearer, and kinder than it's been in years. If you're reading this and something about my story resonates with you, if you're questioning whether your partner's behavior is normal or healthy, please know 2 things. First, trust your instincts. That knot in your stomach when something feels wrong? Listen to it. Second, you are not alone, and it's never too late to reclaim your story. I never imagined I'd be grateful for that mortifying day when Jason showed up at my office with roses and a string quartet. But in a strange way, his final attempt to control me became the catalyst for my freedom. Sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Have you ever ignored red flags in a relationship only to realize later they were actually warning signs? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments.